the two Ukrainian generals who forced the Russians to retreat, Lieutenant General Serhiy Shuptala and Lieutenant General Serhiy Nayev, aren't famous, yet both have been awarded Ukraine's highest military honor. Shuptala was made Hero of Ukraine in 2015. Nayev received the honor in 2022. Here's what they did to deserve it. Lieutenant General Serhiy Shuptala is a career military man. Today, he's chief of the general staff, but he's no backroom paper pusher. In 2014, Colonel Shuptala was appointed commander of the 128th Mountain Infantry Brigade. His men nicknamed him Butko, Father. The 128th took part in the war from the very beginning. They fought at Donetsk and Stanitsa Luhanska. The Ukrainian army was underprepared in 2014. Very few soldiers had any sort of combat experience. The military had been under-equipped and understaffed for years. When war broke out in the east, Ukraine was at a loss. Yet people like Shuptala never wavered in their resolve. He says it was the most difficult time.
We were learning everything on the fly.
Gradually, though, it became easier. The Russia-backed separatist forces were on the retreat. Russia had to send in its regular units to stop the Ukrainian counterattack. In the winter of 2015, the 128th was holding the city of Debaltseve. The Russians kept up a non-stop artillery barrage, but the Ukrainians did not retreat, despite being outmanned. Serhiy Shuptala never even laid down to sleep. He took short naps sitting up. One of the soldiers from the 128th Brigade recalled,
"He knew all the officers by name, he knew many soldiers by name, and he never made a rash decision."
Colonel Shuptala was awarded the Gold Star of the Hero of Ukraine after Debaltseve. His unit had stopped the Russian advance. One of the men under his command was Alexander, his son.
Being an infantryman is hard, but it's an honor.
Shuptala said in 2020.
It's the infantry that meets the enemy face to face.
His son Alexander served in a different unit. Today, Lieutenant General Shuptala is chief of the general staff. This is the brain center of Ukrainian military operations. Lieutenant General Serhiy Nayev is the commander of the joint forces of the armed forces of Ukraine. His path has been similar to Shuptala's. A career officer, he served in the East and South between 2014 and 2017.
I spend most of my time in my area of responsibility,
He said.
Whenever I don't need to be at a conference in Kiev, I try to visit as many forward positions as I can.
Like many Ukrainian officers, Nayev believes in a hands-on approach. In the first days of the full-scale invasion, he sprang into action.
Once the Russians lost Kiev, the game was up.
He says,
And once they failed in their plan to land at Odessa, their blitzkrieg was dead.
Nayev was the man behind that Russian failure. The Russians intended to skirt Mykolaiv and join up with their troops in Transnistria. That region of Moldova has been occupied by Russia since the early 1990s. But an intelligence officer under Nayev's command figured it out. When the Russians tried to land at Odessa, the Ukrainians were ready.
We concentrated our anti-landing defense there. Minefields were set up in the water. Neptune anti-ship missiles were deployed. The enemy tried to trawl our minefields, but we stopped them with fire.
Now Nayev says his first priority is defense. Ukraine doesn't rule out the possibility of a new attack from Belarus. The Russians still dream of advancing on Kiev from the north. But Lieutenant General Nayev says it won't work this time.
I am certain the enemy will not be able to move from this direction anymore, and we're doing everything we can to justify that certainty.
Both Shuptala and Nayev are men of few words. Their actions definitely speak louder.